Previously on the Skip and Josh podcast.
Right, well, because it's similar to, player salaries. They go up every year. So player suspensions, they go up every year.
The Skip and Josh podcast is on now.
Hello?
Skippy.
Hey, Cub. What's
How's
up?
it going?
I'm back from Barcelona.
Back from Barcelona. You made it back in one piece.
I did, yeah. It was quite a trip.
So I understand that there are some attractive women in Barcelona.
Oh, boy. I don't want to get into trouble, but we did like a bunch of events and we hired these temps.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. I'll just leave it at that. I swear we had all these temps come. There's 10 of them.
Mm-hmm.
It was 3 days in a row and we had the same 10 girls and they came in their same outfit. I was in like a loop of a Robert Palmer music video. It was like Simply Irresistible or Addicted to Love. It was like that's what I was in it. That's what it was.
Yeah, I didn't go anywhere, so I'm not back from anything, but I'm still here. So just wanted you to know that.
Okay, were you okay without me? Last time I was gone, you said you were a ship without a rudder.
No, I was okay this time. But the funny thing is, this time, last time you were gone, we at least texted.
I was gone longer last time.
No, but we at least texted a bit. This time, it was almost like there was no communication whatsoever for days in a row.
Oh, because I have so much work on these trips. Like the work is endless, and it's endless because I have the work that I'm doing when I'm there, and then in North America where the offices are, it's like that only starts like at 2:00 in the afternoon, right? Because of the time difference.
Right,
so then I'm on getting emails from people in New York or in the East Coast till like all night. So the days are exhausting and I didn't have time for anything. So it kind of sucks.
Okay, speaking of exhausting, I need to warn the listeners, I didn't have my pre-show nap today, so I'm very cranky and I don't know how this episode's going to go at all.
Oh boy. I'm sure you'll be fine.
So Skip, with the NFL season slated to start next week, we figured it'd be a good time to do our NFL preview.
Are you ready for some football?
And who better to have on for the NFL preview? None other than our NFL/March Madness expert, Neil Schnurback. Welcome to the show, Neil.
Hi, guys. Great to be back here.
Welcome, Neil.
So, Neil, let's get right into it because there's a lot of hot topics in the NFL right now. Of course, every team has now completed their preseason schedule, and no one really cares about those games. But a lot happened in the last few weeks. And so let's just start with, a team you know very well, the Patriots. First of all, can anyone beat them? And how much will Julian Edelman's injury affect the team?
I think they're going to be hard to beat this year. I'm usually a skeptic, even though the Patriots do so well. I try not to be a homer, but that Brandon Cooks addition is huge. I think the team is really strong. David Harris was a great addition on defense. They have Rob Gronkowski back. I think they're going to be very tough to beat. The Edelman injury, you're not going to lie, it's very big. Brady loves to throw to him on third down. He's a tremendous possession receiver, but they have guys who could step up. You got Chris Hogan and Malcolm Mitchell and Dami Amendola will all just have to step up. And I think the Patriots will be just fine. And the division is so weak that they should be okay.
It's funny because a few years ago, you would say, oh, Julian Edelman, he was like a bit player in their team, 3-4 years ago. And he's developed into such an important player for them that you're like, wow, how are they gonna survive without him? But you just know that they will, right?
It's a good point you make. I think it was 4 years ago they signed Amendola as the Wes Welker replacement, and Edelman was really an afterthought. They signed him to a 1-year contract to be a punt returner, but he ended up taking. Amendola got hurt and was not as effective as they thought he might be at the beginning of that season. And Edelman just stepped up and became such a key cog in the Patriots machine. But nonetheless, the offense is so good. I think they'll be just fine.
It's funny because when we spoke about the Patriots over the summer, I asked you, people are saying they're going to go undefeated. Is it possible? I mean, it's so undefeated is it's so improbable, and you need to have so many things going your way. But they are a strong team, they're going to play the 2 games against the Dolphins, the 2 games against the Bills, and 2 games against the Jets. That's 6 wins just without trying, just for showing up, right? That's like when you show up for a test and you get points for writing your name. That's them, right? So after that, I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah, but I don't see undefeated. I think there's some tough games. I think they have the Steelers on the road. They open up with the Chiefs, which is a tough game. So I think again it'll be like a 2-3 loss season, but they're certainly the Super Bowl favorites.
Here's what I'll say about the Patriots. They had injury after injury, it seemed, last year, and it got to the point where, well, a lot of people thought, okay, this is the week they're going to lose. This is the week they're going to lose. And they never lost. Not only did they not lose, they covered the spread, I think, every single week last year, no matter how big the spread was, no matter who they were playing. It was just, when I was making picks against the spread, I didn't even look at their opponent or what the number was. I just picked the Patriots and moved on to the next game.
Josh has a theory that Belichick looks at the spread, and then during the pregame speech or the halftime speech, he's like, guys, we're favored by 10.5. We need to make sure we win by more than 10.5. Like,
Nothing would shock me, in all honesty. I don't think he looks at the spread, but nothing would surprise me.
Right.
He would play we get no respect if they're only favored by like 27 against the Jaguars.
Exactly. Like, exactly.
So moving on to the team that the Patriots defeated in the Super Bowl last year, the Atlanta Falcons. It was a devastating way to lose the game. They had a huge lead. Their owner and I think everyone in the building thought the game was over in the third quarter. So now how do the Falcons avoid a letdown this season after what happened?
Yeah, it's going to be really hard, to be quite honest. If you look at teams that have suffered defeats like this, they haven't really jumped back to the same level as they were the year past. Just looking at the Seahawks when they lost to the Patriots, I mean, they were still obviously a good team, but I don't think they returned to the playoffs the next year. If they did, they lost in the first round. So they didn't hit those heights again. And, the Panthers obviously struggled last year after their Super Bowl loss. So, but at the same time, I think the Falcons have such a great young defense with Vic Beasley and others. And I think Quinn's a great coach. Matt Ryan's coming into his own. Julio Jones is a veteran. Last season was magical. I don't think they'll repeat. They'll hit the heights of last year, but I do think that they're certainly a playoff contender, and I think they'll get into the playoffs again this year. But I don't think they'll make it all the way like they did last year. But it'll be tough to overcome that loss.
I have two things to say about the Falcons. So yes, it's true. Some teams don't rebound, but other teams do, like take the San Antonio Spurs. They lost the championship on a ridiculously fluky shot by Ray Allen from the corner, right? And they basically came back the next year and said, we're going all the way, nothing's going to stop us. And they did, and they killed the Heat again in the final. And I'm not saying the Falcons are going to do that, but I'm saying they could use that as kind of fuel to the fire. Now, that being said, I'm not a Falcons fan, and last year all I did on this show was say that I didn't believe in them all the way up until the end. I think their division's incredibly tough. I think any of those four teams could win the division. Carolina could easily win the division. Atlanta could easily win the division. Anything goes there. So I think that and the other thing is that the NFL, as well as I do, is like. What you do one year doesn't mean anything because teams are ready for it now. So the defensive coordinators of the Bucs, the Saints, the Panthers, and everybody else on their schedule have been looking at looking at Falcons film all year and just like all off season, figuring out how they're going to stop it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And the example you gave is a good one with the Spurs, but you have to remember that the Spurs have a championship pedigree, whereas the Falcons, it's really, I know they made the NFC title game a couple years back, but really this was their first Super Bowl run in quite a long time. So I wonder how they're going to recover. Not as battle tested as a team like the Spurs. But no, I agree with what you're saying, and I do think teams are going to game plan for them, and they're going to have to be ready for that. So,
Josh, how do you feel about the Falcons? I know you didn't like them last year.
I think what I said to you last year, I don't know if it was before the Super Bowl or after the Super Bowl, but I definitely said this on one of our episodes that...
I remember.
That in the NFC South, it's a different team that wins that division every year. So, yes, the Falcons did win their division, but how meaningful is it? Because I don't think it's such a strong division, to be honest. I really don't.
Also, didn't you say they weren't going to win more than...
Oh yeah, I think I said that they weren't gonna make the playoffs. I think I said is what I said to you after the Super Bowl.
I think that's 50-50 right now.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like everything is, right?
That's right. It either will happen or won't.
Right.
Staying in the NFC, but moving to the East, Let's switch gears and talk about the Cowboys a little bit. They had a very good season last year. The question is, can they repeat their success, and how big of a loss will it be missing Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games if in fact his suspension is held up and he does miss 6 games?
Yeah, and I'll put my lawyer hat on for a second. I think he will actually miss the 6 games. I think the Tom Brady ruling by the appeals court really shows us that Goodell is the ultimate decision maker, and there's no reason for him not to miss these games. And I think he's really going to have to miss these games this year, to be quite honest. But in any event, it's a pretty big loss. They do have Darren McFadden, if he could stay healthy for 6 games, might be okay. And their offensive line is so strong that I think their running game will be okay. For me, the issue with the Cowboys, I'm not as sold on Dak Prescott, I think, as many others were. I mean, he was certainly poised and impressive in his rookie year, but I just don't think he's that great a thrower of the ball, to be quite honest. And their defense is really just not all that great. I think the Giants are improved. The Eagles are improved. They have a tough first-place schedule. And to me, I don't think the Cowboys are going to make the playoffs this year. That's my hot take of the season, I guess. But you always get teams like that have these sort of magical runs that win 12, 13 games and then fall back to the pack when they have to play a tougher schedule and when teams are onto them. And I don't love Dallas this year, even if Ezekiel Elliott plays all 16 games.
I hate Dallas every year, but but that's just like the fan in me, and looking at them as objectively as I can. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I don't think Prescott's all that good. But he does make good decisions. And, one thing that I always point out, I've always pointed out to my son as he grew into like a football fan, and he started to say, why isn't this guy so good? And how come this guy's a better runner? This guy's a better thrower. Like, why isn't he such a better quarterback? And I always told him, like, playing quarterback in the NFL is all about making decisions. And Dak Prescott made very few bad decisions last year. So I have to give him that. But like you said, I don't know. I'm just not sold on the Cowboys, especially without Elliott for 6 games. Although, like you said, McFadden ran for 1,000 yards the year before, and McFadden is like a corpse, right?
Yeah,
and don't they also have Albert Morris? So
yeah, Alfred Morris, yeah.
Like honestly,
corpse.
Another corpse. But like I think either of those guys, if either of them played 16 games, could run for 1,000 yards because their offensive line is so strong, right? So
yeah, no question.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold on the Cowboys, and I'm now going the opposite way. What do you think about the Eagles? Since I'm an Eagles fan.
I actually really like the Eagles. The Eagles, I was sort of promising myself I wouldn't go all numbers nerd on you this time around, but the Eagles finished 4th last year in DVOA, which is
here we go, Josh. Here we go. Now this is
I'm so excited. I was hoping for this. When do we get into the Ken Pomeroy standings?
There you go. So that's actually a metric by Football Outsiders that measures value over average, essentially. And so they finished 4th last year, despite having a mediocre record. And if you remember, the Eagles had some great wins last year, right? They demolished the Steelers. I'm sure you remember that game. And and Carson Wentz, to me, looks like the real deal at quarterback. I mean, he's got to. You talked about decision making. He's got to grow into his decision making a little bit, but that guy is a great talent. Running back maybe is a bit of a problem. Blunt didn't look great this preseason, but I think Wendell Smallwood and Sproles will be pretty good. I think the Eagles could surprise. They might. I wouldn't be shocked if they win the division this year, to be quite honest.
But their defense was very solid last year. And now they've added that guy Barnett, their first round draft pick. So I think the pass rush is really going to be great. I think their front 7 is going to really dominate the ball. And like you said, offensively, we'll see. But I mean, they've upgraded all their skill positions. Blunt, we'll see. But Alshon Jeffrey, right. Torrey Smith, right? Like, they had no receivers last year. All of a sudden, they actually have actual legit NFL receivers now.
For sure. And Alshon Jeffrey is not only a legit NFL receiver. No, I don't know if people realize just how good this guy is. To me, he's a top 10, 15 receiver in the league. And he gets an upgrade at quarterback, obviously, right now, and comes into the season healthy. I think he's going to have a huge season.
They're like everything in the NFL is about staying healthy, and keeping your guys on the field. Like, they were a different team when Lane Johnson was suspended last year. and it really affected the offensive line. So I think their offensive line really has to stay healthy so Wentz could stay on his feet, and I think they'll be fine. But like this, even if they're fine, the division's up for grabs. Like Cowboys, Giants, Eagles. I don't think the Redskins have a chance, but I think the Giants certainly also are a force to be reckoned with.
And the Redskins are really not a terrible team. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to win the division or make the playoffs, but they certainly could play spoiler. I think they're at least a 7-8 win team.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to disagree there. I think the Redskins are awful. I mean, the Redskins are completely awful. They have a decent quarterback. I don't think they have any wide receivers. They got the guy from Cleveland who used to be a quarterback in college. He's really their only legit wide receiver.
Terrell Pryor.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Jamison Crowder, I like.
But they also there's so many other issues going on in that locker room, in that front office. Do they even have a general manager? Who's running the team there? The owner likes to meddle. That whole organization's a disaster.
Right. It can go two ways. Like the team could rally around it, and the coach, hopefully, if he's a good coach, will say it's like us against the world type of mentality, backs to the wall, no respect, like like Neil was saying, before, or it just blows up, and then everybody hates each other, and then they go like 3-13, right?
Let's move on to the NFC West. I just heard that the Seahawks acquired Sheldon Richardson in a deal, so that certainly changes the makeup of that division.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think the Seahawks were the class of the division anyway, but to add a player of that caliber to their defensive line, I think it changes the dynamics of the entire NFL, to be honest. I think the Seahawks are now 1B to the Patriots 1A as Super Bowl favorites with Richardson. If their that defense is just so strong, I don't see them letting up more than like 15 points a game, to be quite honest. It's just really a completely dominant unit. And then if their running backs can play a little bit, if Eddie Lacy can stay off the food and Thomas Rawls gets it together, I think honestly,
stay off the food. If he can stay off the food, no food.
No food for Eddie. Fat Eddie's got to be like medium-sized Eddie or something. But I think these guys are. I think that's a team to really watch this year. Not that that's a surprise. The Seahawks have been great for years, but I think this Sheldon Richardson move is a real game changer.
But don't you feel like their defense was always so dominant? I mean, yes, he's great and he's gonna make their defense better, but their defense was already really good. It was their running game that just let them down. Like they were not the same team without Marshawn Lynch, right? They were there. It was a different team. Russell Wilson wasn't the same quarterback. The offense wasn't the same offense. Like it was just not this. It didn't. Their offense didn't complement the defense like it did before. Right. And
right. But
so
Rawls was hurt a lot last year. So you have to remember that as well. So I think if Rawls can stay healthy, and again, if Eddie Lacy, who they brought in, can be, sort of a 75% version of what Marshawn Lynch was, then yes, you're right. Their running game is key. With regard to what you said with the defense, you're 100% right. But I think where it makes a huge difference is in playoff games. If they're playing teams like if the Falcons can repeat their offensive exploits from last year, it'll make a difference against those guys. Or if the Seahawks make the Super Bowl against a team like the Patriots or a team like the Steelers, then a guy like Richardson becomes a huge difference maker. Right. But yes, you're right. Their defense was going to be amazing with or without Sheldon Richardson.
Do you think Arizona can challenge for a playoff spot, or are they done?
I'm not so into Arizona this year. David Johnson's a heck of a talent. But you get just your Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald are each a year older. And, defense is okay. I still like the Honey Badger and Chandler Jones is still great, but I don't know. It seems to be something missing. They were just so unimpressive last year with all those expectations. Yeah. And I guess it wouldn't shock me if they, if they picked up their level again this year, but I sort of don't see it happening.
Me too. I don't see it happening. The division sucks, but
aside from Seattle, right?
But I just don't see Arizona. I just don't see Carson Palmer staying healthy, and I don't see any production from the quarterback. So.
Is Carson Palmer in a wheelchair yet, or what? That guy's ancient already by now.
Not only is he ancient, you're right, Josh. He's ancient, but he's had so many crazy injuries, and every time you think he's literally dead, he comes back. He's like the Walking Dead. He won't go down.
I mean, he is ancient, but if you look at, Brady's older and Drew Brees, I think, is older than Palmer. But it's just the fact is he's brittle. He's just a broken down version of what he used to be.
Brady's got that special vegan diet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I wasn't going to talk about this, but can someone explain to me how Matthew Stafford is the highest paid player of all time, considering he hasn't really done that much in his career?
Well, I ran a Twitter poll this week, Josh.
Oh, okay.
So I had NFL and Detroit Lions fans. The Matthew Stafford contract is ... Good deal for a good QB, 10%. Okay salaries, it's okay. Salaries are all crazy anyways, 40%. GM should be fired, 50%.
See, I would have gone with option 2 on that one, to be honest. I don't think the GM should be fired. It's so hard to find a quarterback, right? And Stafford, even though he's not young, he is still only 30 years old. He's still a quarterback that's not old for a quarterback. He's still growing into himself. You can win with this guy. What else were they going to do? He was really their only option. It's kind of, even though it's the highest pay in a contract, I still think it's sort of market rate for what a quarterback's going for. If you look at like what Kirk Cousins is getting paid, who I don't think is better than Matthew Stafford, it sort of makes sense. He's not a transcendent talent or anything like that, but at the same time, I think you can win with this guy. He's a pretty good quarterback. He keeps the Lions relevant, and I think that's really why he's the highest paid quarterback right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's a decent quarterback, and that's what they're getting paid, right? Yeah,
100%. And quarterback is just a different position than any other position on the field. And the reason that he's the highest paid is because it was his turn to get paid. But if it was Ben Roethlisberger, as an example, whose contract was up, then Ben Roethlisberger would be the highest paid. It's everyone like that except for Brady, who takes pay cuts every single time because his wife makes $100 million a year.
Right.
So
love it.
We've been very NFC heavy on this show so far. So I'm going to move over to the AFC, and in the West, I want to know if you think the Broncos can compete with Trevor Siemian as their starting QB.
Oh boy.
I actually like Siemian better than most people do. I mean, he's not great. Don't get me wrong. I think he's below average, maybe 20th best QB in the NFL, but I don't think he's 32nd best. And to me, if Jamal Charles can capture some of his former magic, maybe with CJ Anderson, and that defense is so strong, I do think the Broncos will be competitive. I think they're going to come back. I think they're going to win that division again. I think the Raiders are going to falter a little bit this year. And I love the Broncos D. And I think Siemian is good enough, right? He's got great receivers also with Sanders and Thomas. And I think he's good enough that they'll be able to win some games and, compete. I don't think they can win a Super Bowl with Trevor Siemian. Maybe they'll draft someone or Paxton Lynch will grow into himself. But I think they'll be good enough.
I think that we had the answer ready to this question last year. Their defense is great. Their quarterback is, like Neil said, worse than average, and that made them 9-7. So that's where they'll be again. They'll be 9-7, or 8-8, or maybe 10-6 if they overachieve. But I don't think they're going to be better than that.
Okay. Fair enough.
I feel like they'll be a bit better than 9-7. I think they were a bit unlucky last year, to be honest. They lost some games that they should have won. I'm remembering one game against the Raiders that the Raiders came back against them late. So I feel like they're more of a 10-6 style team that'll sneak into a wild card position.
But I agree with you. The Raiders are going to definitely take a step back because they won so many close games last year that I just don't think they can. That's going to work in their favor again, So. And what about the Chiefs? What are the Chiefs like? How do you feel about Alex Smith? The best player in the whole preseason in all of the NFL was Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? But I think that's actually going to be problematic for the Chiefs. Funny enough, because I feel like Alex Smith is going to be looking over his shoulder now, and he's the clear starter this year. And I feel like that's not going to be great for him. I don't think he's going to be able to perform under this pressure. You remember, obviously when he was with the 49ers and he had Kaepernick coming up behind him. I know he sort of played well then, but I have a feeling Alex Smith probably feels like the NFL is out to get him, and he's done nothing but win games in the league. And why are these teams picking players to take his starting job? And I feel like the Chiefs might get a divided locker room, and the team might suffer. To be honest, I'm not feeling the Chiefs all that much this year.
Right. Very cool.
So Neil, you may be aware that when I'm confused about things, I go to you for answers. Here's something that confuses me even more than the Matthew Stafford signing. The Cleveland Browns, who are awful, they cut Joe Hayden, and to add insult to injury, A team in their own division, the Steelers, picked him up. Explain this to me.
Well, I mean, I can explain both things independently, right? Hayden was a fairly high-priced guy. The Browns are not going to be competitive this year. They're looking to go younger. I'm not really sure who their starting cornerback is going to be now, but they probably wanted to give someone else a look to see what they have for the future. And Joe Hayden is not going to be the future for that team, so they decided to get rid of him at this point. And then. And I guess they couldn't get anything in a trade. I think that's really the big mystery. And then for the Steelers to pick him up, I mean, that was sort of a no-brainer. Sign him to a 3-year contract. Hayden's lost a step, I would say, but he's still a legit number one corner. And the Steelers right now, to me, they're looking at defeating the Patriots, getting to the top of the perch in the AFC, and they need good cornerback play. The Steelers always play zone defense against the Patriots, and Tom Brady always picks them apart. You can watch any Patriots-Steelers game. It's borderline ridiculous. So now they have a cornerback who can play man-to-man defense, and potentially the Steelers can change their game plan against the Patriots. And I think this was a move that was made basically to try and beat the Patriots. So it was a good move for the Steelers.
Don't they have William Gay on the other side, who's also like a real up-and-comer, right? So it's like they have 1A, 1B now, sort of at corner.
100%, right? So that was the issue of before. Gay could play one-on-one with, let's say, Chris Hogan on the outside, because he's not really an inside slot corner to cover Edelman. But they had no one else, and they would have to play zone the rest of the field. It just didn't make sense. But now if they have two guys, they can play some press man coverage. And to me, if you play press man coverage against the Patriots and can get pressure from your front four, we've seen it time and time again. That's the only way to beat the Patriots, right?
But are the Steelers willing to do that in a playoff game? They're going to abandon their scheme and change it up? I don't know. We'll see, right?
I think maybe, right? What they've been doing just hasn't worked. We're not talking about a small sample size, right? This is like since Brady came into the league in 2001. They beat the Steelers in the playoff game, and the Steelers have been playing the same zone defense against the Patriots for close to 20 years. So I would say, they should probably change it up, and I think they will with Joe Hayden.
And Josh, to answer your question about why they would do it, like the NFL is ruthless. We talked about this a little bit off air, but like it's a ruthless league, right? You're 30, you're making a lot of money. The team doesn't think they're going anywhere. They don't want to pay you anymore. You're gone.
I get it. Because in the NFL, if you cut a guy, you don't have to pay him. It's not like the other 4 team sports. Yeah. I get that. But I mean, if he's as good as people think he is, you would think they would have been able to get something for him in a trade rather than get nothing for him at all.
That's what I was shocked at. Like right. they should have tried to get anything for him. Anything.
A draft pick.
Yeah. But maybe other teams weren't interested in his contract either. I don't know.
Yeah, could be.
So one team that sort of had its coming out party last year, if you will, are the Oakland Raiders, because Derek Carr had an amazing season until he got injured, and now they've added Marshawn Lynch. So what's the prognosis for the Raiders for this year?
I don't love them, to be honest. I like Derek Carr as a young quarterback. But I do think they got fortunate. He was much better in the fourth quarter than he was in the other 3 quarters. And to me, that's somewhat fluky. And it caused them to win a lot of games. Marshawn Lynch, the last time we saw him, he was looking much older and much slower. Now, maybe he's come back and, after a year off, and he'll come back rejuvenated. But I'm just not sure. You have the whole issue with them leaving the city of Oakland. I think that could play into things. Remember what happened with the Cleveland Browns all those years ago when they were leaving for Baltimore, their last season under Bill Belichick. And the defense is really just okay. Khalil Mack's a tremendous player, but aside from that, they don't have too many playmakers on defense. I think the Raiders are a very average team.
I think their defense is highly overrated. And like I said before, they won so many close games last year. You can't have this lady luck on your side. Like you said, you can't play 3 quarters out of 4 every game like poorly and then just play well in the fourth quarter and expect to win. And they did last year, but that's luck. But it's like it has to run out, like eventually it's going to catch up to you. Like I don't think the Raiders are a bad team, but I just don't think they're 12-4, I
agree. I think that to me they're a 9-7, 8-8 style team.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's, I think, a little known stat that I'm not sure if the listeners are aware of or even you guys are aware of, but in 14 of the past 15 NFL seasons, there's been at least one team that's finished last in their division one season and finished first in their division the very next season. The only time it didn't happen was in 2014. So, of the 8 teams who finished last in their respective divisions in 2016, which one is going to finish first in 2017?
Yeah, that actually is a crazy stat, especially when you consider you have some teams, the Colts won so many years in a row and the Patriots won so many years in a row, right? Their division, that it's really within only a couple of divisions that the division winners keep going from last to first year to year, which is pretty crazy. I mean, to me, there are only 2 options, right? Because you look at some of the teams that finished in last year. You've got the Jets. They're not finishing first. The Browns aren't finishing first, right? The 49ers aren't finishing first. I think your 2 choices here are the Panthers and the Eagles. And to me, and I spoke about them a little bit before when you asked me about them, Skip, I think the answer here to me is the Eagles. I think they're just a solid team. As you said before, their defense is solid. Their offense, when Lane Johnson was playing, was very good last year. Carson Wentz has another year of development. We've got Alshon Jeffrey. And I think the Eagles are a very solid team. But it wouldn't shock me if the Panthers went worst to first as well.
I agree with Neil 100%. Everything he says. There's only 2 choices to your question, Josh, and it's the Eagles and the Panthers. And it's just by process of elimination, right? Niners suck. Bears suck. Browns, forget that. AFC East, it's the Patriots, right? There's no one dethroning them. So I think the Eagles could win the division. And I actually think the Panthers are going to win the division. What do you think of Christian McCaffrey?
I like McCaffrey. And I think Kelvin Benjamin's going to have a good season this year too. And I think with McCaffrey, I think Jonathan Stewart might have a good season as well with fresher legs. So yeah, the Panthers I think are going to be much better, obviously, than they were last year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be angry. Like they had such a magical season 2 years ago, and then like you said, like they got killed in the Super Bowl, and then they kind of never recovered. They suffered the hangover, right? And I think they're going to come out. I think they're going to come out with a big chip on their shoulder this year, waiting to prove something.
Okay, so the right answer is the Carolina Panthers, and I'll tell you why. First of all, they play in a very weak division, in my opinion. Number one. Number two,
I think it's the most competitive division in the league. Any one of those teams could win the division.
That's your opinion. You're entitled. And then the second reason is I told you after the Super Bowl last year that the Falcons weren't even going to make the playoffs, so they're not even a factor. And Cam Newton, speaking of people with a chip on their shoulder, Cam Newton wants to prove that 2 seasons ago was not a fluke, and I think he's going to have an excellent comeback season, and Carolina's going to win their division.
Nice. But
I don't see a problem with that at all, Cub. I think that's definitely a decent take, to be quite honest. I could see it.
For sure. But it's not a weak division. It's incredibly competitive. Maybe none of those teams are great, but all those teams are good.
Yeah, any of those 4 could win the division. And actually, I think I think there's going to be 3 playoff teams from that division.
Okay, well, see, that you said any one of those 4 can win the division, and that's kind of what I meant in the sense that if you look back at the history of that division, I think they have a different winner every year. It's not like the NFC North where it's Green Bay all the time, or it's not like the AFC East where it's New England all the time, or the AFC North where it's Pittsburgh all the time. That division seems to have a different winner every year.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, Neil, want to get all your other division picks. So let's just go. I'm gonna rapid fire here. We're gonna go division by division. You're gonna tell me who's gonna win it, and then Skip will do the same with you. So let's start AFC East.
Patriots.
Skip.
Patriots.
AFC North.
Steelers.
AFC South.
I like the Texans.
Tennessee Titans. But can we talk about the Texans for a second?
Sure.
It's supposed to be rapid fire, but okay.
Well, how do you feel about Deshaun Watson? Like, he's not even going to start, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he's going to play. I think it's really going to be Savage, a quarterback. But you look, they won the division last year, right? And J.J. Watt's coming back. I think their running game's good enough. I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to have a good year at receiver. And it's just that, to me, that's a bad division. And I think the Texans are really the class of the division.
AFC West.
Broncos.
I'm going to still take the Raiders.
NFC East.
I like the Eagles.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
NFC North.
Packers.
NFC South.
I actually like the Panthers.
Oh my God. Carolina Panthers. I'll go with you there. Yeah.
And finally, the NFC West.
I like the Seahawks.
Seahawks also.
Okay, so...
Wildcard teams?
Well, actually, my next question for you, Neil, was going to be, who are some surprise Super Bowl contenders that are really not on the radar?
I hate to keep going back to the same team, but I think the Eagles certainly are one. I think they're actually a Super Bowl contender. I think they're going to be a division winner. One team that I like to make the playoffs, and as Skip said earlier, they're sort of everyone's darling, is Tampa Bay. I think they're a fairly solid team. Winston's going to grow a little bit. I like what they've done with their receiving core. I think Tampa Bay's got a shot. And another team that Skip mentioned as a division winner, but I like them as a wild card team to make the playoffs and maybe make some noise, is the Tennessee Titans, who I really like Mariota at quarterback. They've got some pretty good offensive skill players, and their defense is fairly solid. So I think that's another team that can make some noise. Other than that, yeah, it's really the usual suspects, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's Seattle and the Patriots and the Steelers, I think, are the big powerhouses, and everybody else is kind of chasing them, right?
Right.
It looks like Tennessee and Tampa Bay are mirroring each other. They both drafted quarterbacks the same year, and both quarterbacks are developing. It seems to be at the same rate, and those two teams could be headed for a collision course to meet in the Super Bowl. Maybe not this year, but one day.
Well, they're both trending, right? They were both lousy. They got a little bit better. The quarterbacks, Mariota kind of burst on the scene, and Winston took a little longer to develop maybe. And then last year, Winston really took a major step forward. Mariota continued to grow, and both teams, had winning records last year. And yeah, I really like Tennessee. I like the way they're going. I'm a little bit worried about Tampa, that I think there's a lot of expectations, on them, and I'm that division's so competitive that I think it's going to be tough. Whereas Tennessee, their division is so bad that I think they're going to maybe have a bit of a easier time to continue winning.
By the way, and if we really want to go off the board for a team that might be competitive, I kind of like the Jaguars this year to be better than they have been. I think their defense is quite strong. Offensively, Bortles is still quite a bit of a problem at quarterback, and they're certainly not going to go, they're not making a Super Bowl run with Bortles, but I could see them being competitive in that weak division. The Colts are terrible, by the way. They're terrible.
You can't go as many years as they have been with so many high draft picks. Like their defense is all crazy high draft picks, right? The whole defense. Yep. And it's incredible that they're still so bad last year. So I think there's only look, they were 3-13, so there's only one way to go, right? It's but can they get to 8-8? I don't know.
So Neil, which two teams are going to meet in the Super Bowl, and which one's going to win?
Yeah, so I guess it's sort of boring, but I'm liking Patriots over Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Rematch of a great Super Bowl matchup from a couple of years ago, but I think the Pats were the class of the league last year, and they've only gotten stronger. And Seattle, I really like this Richardson pickup, and I like what they've done with their running game in the offseason, and I think those two teams are on a collision course.
And Skip?
I like Pittsburgh over Seattle.
Okay.
I think that Joe Hayden was huge.
I agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
All right. So, Neil, how can people get in touch with you or read about your fantasy football picks on a weekly basis during the season?
Absolutely. So I write for a website called fantasyassembly.com. Every week I make football picks based on DraftKings salaries. So if you're into daily fantasy sports, check me out on fantasyassembly.com. I also do golf picks if you're into that. And you can follow me on Twitter at AssemblyNeil. And ever have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I'm always responsive.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show, and you certainly add a lot of facts and stats and numbers and metrics, and we love to hear all that stuff. So thanks for being on the show again, and maybe we'll have you on. Well, we'll definitely have you on again, either prior to the Super Bowl or maybe prior to the playoffs altogether. We'll wait and see for that.
Anytime, guys. Always happy to chat.
So, Skip, isn't it great having Neil on the show like this? I mean, he brings so much insight. It's fantastic. I love it.
The thing is, it's scary having him on the show because, we consider ourselves, knowledgeable.
I know, but he makes us look dumb.
When he starts talking about, I don't even know what he was talking about, that ratings,
the DVR, the DVM.
It's too much, But I told you, when we were in Cooperstown, we were sitting next to him for that whole afternoon, right? Mm-hmm, and you went to get food, and then I was I had a whole chat with him about the NFL, And as soon as we start talking about the NFL, I'm like, uh-oh.
You're out of your league.
I'm out of my league. And that doesn't happen. Like when I talk about sports, I'm not out of my league. I feel like I could talk to anybody about sports, pretty much anything, and I'm always the biggest expert in the room. But not with him when it comes to this, right?
Right.
Yeah. So before we sign off, I just want to remind everybody that you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play, or the podcast app of your choice. For example, I use a great app that I like called Overcast. And if you do listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would also love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter, @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page, where you can also leave a review now on our show. As always, you can get all the links that I just mentioned on our website at skipandjosh.com.
Great. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
The Skip and Josh podcast is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.